The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it. Oh, what a goal! What a goal!
And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and it has been way too long since I've last done a podcast, and I don't want to spend too much time saying why I didn't do a podcast because I want to introduce my guest, and so I'll get to that explanation here in a second. But yeah, I'm super excited to finally be back recording an episode, and I think it's funny because people are always like, oh, well, there's no soccer going on, so what's there to talk about? And the thing is, there's always stuff to talk about with MLS, but for the Union, I feel like there's always topics we can talk about. And yeah, we have a pretty big show today. I'm not going to put a time limit on it today because both me and today's guests absolutely love stats. And yeah, I'll try to keep the amount of stats we give to you guys to a minimum because I know stats are definitely not for everybody, but just fair warning, today's arguments, points are definitely going to be based around stats and everything. And I have no problem with that. But like I said, I know some of you guys are like, okay, yeah, this is way too much. But returning back to the podcast, you've heard him on Twitter Spaces. You've heard him on a 1v1 episode with me telling his Philadelphia Union story. He is the man of the hour, Kyle Almoney. Kyle, how you doing? Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back, Todd. And I just want to say something before we get going. That intro, and I was telling my wife this, every Monday when you drop on Sunday, I get up at 5:30 usually. I pull out and see your episode, hit it. And as I'm backing out that driveway, it's like, in Chester, here's El Seno, yes. And you just know. And that's why I love always tweeting, like, start your week off right, because here's another great episode of Free Kick Pod. So, hey, excited. Let's go ahead and get started, man.
I'm glad people still like the intro because I was thinking, I was like, man, some of these calls are a few years old and everything, and I'm definitely not the best at editing like an intro or an outro and stuff like that. My friend Brad's the one who put that stuff together. But I guess if people are still like giving me props for the intro, I guess there's no need to change it. There's been a lot of great goals scored since some of those goals, but I don't know. I mean, if you like it and other people continue to give me compliments, then I guess there's no need to change it. But like I said to you guys, I don't want to go too long, but yeah, I felt bad not giving you guys a review episode for New England. And so basically, long story short, I suffered a third concussion. Maybe I've had more, but that's definitely the third concussion that I had. And so it was like really painful for me to watch the New England game. Like I watched it, but like just the lights and everything were like so hard on my eyes, on my head and everything. Like I couldn't focus on the screen throughout the whole game. I had to turn away a little bit and everything. And so I was like, yeah, this is like really painful. Like I know what happened in that game, but then at the same time too, like I don't know what happened to that game, if that makes sense. And so like, yeah, I couldn't do anything for a couple days because of the concussion. So I was like, there's no way I can watch a replay of this game, take notes and everything, and give my 100%. And yeah, I should have probably said something on Twitter, but I don't know. I didn't feel like getting a whole bunch of, oh, I hope you feel better messages. Like, I appreciate them. And I'm sure, maybe some of you guys after hearing this will tweet at me on Twitter or something and be like, oh, I hope you're feeling better. I'm feeling 100% better now. That's why we're doing the podcast. But yeah, there was just no way I could do the podcast at 100% last week or whenever we last played New England because one, like I said, I couldn't see, the light hurt. And two, I feel like I couldn't remember anything. Like there would be moments where I would just get dizzy. I'd get confused. I'd say something and then I wouldn't even realize I said something. And like that happened at more than one occasion. My parents were like, yeah, Todd, you just said this. I was like, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. I would swear up and down and didn't say something like, yeah, you did. And so I was like, okay, well, my motto has always been never release a podcast episode that I don't feel like it's my 100%. So that's why I didn't give you guys a New England review. But I feel like we don't really need to talk about that game now because, it's been so long ago. Happy we got a point, a well-deserved point. I guess at the end of the day, we probably didn't deserve that point, but Look, New England's mistake is our capitalization, and Mikhail Uber's first touch of the game is a goal. So that's all I'll say about the New England game. But just looking at the MLS standings, the Union, after 14 games played, they sit in second place. New York City's in first with an 8-3-2 record. And the Union, like I said, are in second with 6 wins, 1 loss, 7 draws, 19 goals for, 10 goals against. The 10 goals against is the least amount of goals conceded in the Eastern Conference. And yeah, we know, like, this team, Jim Curtin says it, I feel like every single week, this team's not built on offense. This team's built on defensive performances. We're defense first. And 14 games in, and nothing's been truer than, defense first for this team, right, Kyle?
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole thing with the Union. We're predicated on defense. And you can, like you said, the defense wins championships. But at the same time, I think we know what the Union are. They're going to not worry about possession. They're going to counter teams. They're going to capitalize on mistakes, set pieces. Is it the recipe for success? Well, for us, it has been. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, outside of maybe the Montreal game where I felt like, okay, guys, we need to try something else. That was the only game where, like, I felt we were trying to make something out of nothing, where we were trying to long ball way too much. Other than that, I mean, it's worked all year. I mean, defense wins. You saw it in the Portland game. You even saw it at times in New England, as bad as we played. You've seen it all year. So, yes, I think that has been our recipe, and will continue to be our recipe.
You go ahead and look, too. So many people on Union Twitter, like, complain about, the way that we play, like, this fast counter transition attack of soccer, where people are like, just, like, it's crazy to me where, okay, at the beginning of the season, like, I understood why people were bringing up, our passing stats being terrible, why we continuously give the ball over. But then as the season's gone on, like, people are still complaining about that. And I just told you guys, we're in second place, 19 goals for, 10 goals against. Like, the way that we're playing is working. But fans are still complaining about that, saying, we need to try something different. This isn't working. Like, it is working. Like, this isn't the same attack that we saw last year. This isn't the same defense that we saw last year. And a lot of that's changed because Pat Noonan's no longer here. But Jim Curtin proved that, look, we're going to change up how we press a little bit this season. We're going to change up building out of the back with our center backs like we used to do last season. We're going to just play these one-touch balls over the top and everything. We're going to play these just fast transition balls. And yeah, a lot of times the passes don't come off, but when they do come off, you see Sergio Santos, you see Julian Kranza in behind the defense. You see them cutting the ball back to Daniel guys like the Ali Bedoya. Like, it is working. And if you would have told me that the Union would be in second place after 14 games, I would have called you a liar. And I'll talk about, my season predictions here probably towards the end. But one thing that's interesting, too, is I think a lot of fans were angry about the Union not being in the U.S. Open Cup anymore, saying that, they put a team out there to lose and everything. And, I feel like we could probably spend a whole episode talking about, should the Union have done this? Should they have not done this? And I think the Union should have went for it because, that's the easiest chance to get in CCL, to win a trophy. 5 games, 6 games, and you're in the CCL next season. But the Union didn't go with that, and, it is what it is. And so if you look at the Supporters Shield and standings, you have first LAFC, 29 points. You have New York City in second with 26 points. FC Dallas with 25 points. By the way, I don't know about you, Kyle, but, like, see Dallas this year to last year, like, they've completely turned around their team. Like, I'm surprised to see Dallas playing as good as they are this season with 7 wins, 3 losses, and 4 draws. You have Real Salt Lake in fourth with 25 points. You have the Union in fifth with 25 points. Austin in sixth, another team that's completely shocked me this season. Like, at the beginning of the season, you saw them get a couple wins. You're like, maybe it's because of the opponents that they played. But no, they continue to get wins. And they don't concede a lot of goals either, with only 10 goals given up. And then you go ahead and look, they've given up 18 goals. I was looking at the goal differentials. They score a lot of goals, and they give up quite a few goals. And Montreal, they're in seventh with 23 points. So when you look at the Supporter Shield standings, there's a lot of teams in there that you wouldn't expect after 14, 13 games played that would be in the mix of this. And Jim Curtin always says, yeah, after 10, 11 games of the season, you really get the big picture of what teams are going to be in the playoffs. And we saw Real Salt Lake sneak into the playoffs last season, and they're having a terrific year. But just looking at those 7 teams, I think Dallas is the biggest surprise for me. And yeah, Austin's a huge surprise too. But you saw how terrible Dallas were last season, and to sit third in Supporters Shield standings, I mean, it's been a incredible season for them. And just Austin and Montreal too would be some of those other teams that I'm surprised are up there in the top half of the standings for the Supporter Shield.
I think for me, Dallas, especially after they, get rid of their probably arguably one of their greatest strikers ever. And they're doing it. Everybody always says it's the Union and Dallas building from the academy. And to see what the season Jesus Ferreira's having, to see all these guys are having, it's that one shocked me. Austin shocked me. Bob was kind of like you at the beginning of the season. It was like, oh, Austin's off. Good for them. It's always good when you see younger teams in the league doing well. And I was really happy with them. For me, also seeing what Pat Noonan's doing in Cincinnati, just taking that team to see a team like Montreal. But you and I both know Wilfred Nancy, he's a very good coach like Pat Noonan. He knows soccer, and so he's going to have that team ready. NYCFC, we knew what they were going to be, and that one didn't really shock me as much. I think the craziest one for me was probably New England. They just are kind of, I mean, I knew Turner was going to go, but that one kind of got me a little bit. And even KC to be at the bottom right now after having a very good season. Same with Colorado. I know they sold some pieces too, but it's just like those two teams kind of are a little shocking, but it goes to show the quality of the league has gotten to the point that you just can't rest on your laurels. You got to keep bringing in pieces, quality pieces, building from the academy too. I think the teams that are doing well either A, have money, or B, are building from the academy.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I mean, Portland, too, is down there at 24th. I mean, you look at some of these teams that spend money. Chicago spent a ton of money to get Kasper Schmeichel, Shaqiri. They sit in 28th place. They're having a terrible season. You look at Portland, who, they're spending money more than the Union. New England brought in a couple players, but, Matt Turner's leaving in the summertime. They lost Tejan Buchanan. Atlanta United, we know they always spend 21st. I mean, Seattle, 18th. I mean, it's crazy looking at some of these standings, and you brought up Cincinnati. They sit in 12th. Who would have thought that Cincinnati, well, maybe some Union fans, because I think we all knew how valuable Pat Noonan was to us last season and the years prior. And Cincinnati fans are it's so funny to me just having on Brad Weigel on the podcast a couple times last season, and he was like, yeah, convince me why we should be happy with Pat Noonan. I don't think Cincinnati fans need convincing anymore of Pat Noonan being the right choice for that team.
Right. And the thing is, let's be honest, they had talent. They just didn't have coaching. They have some good players on that team. And look, I mean, Pat's going to do well. And the other interesting thing is they had a nice draft. They got a nice goalkeeper who's come on now. I mean, we were always joking there at the beginning of the season. They're trying to be Union 2 to a degree, basically mocking. And like you and I were just talking about earlier, stat-wise, they're kind of right there with us, and they're attacking a little bit better in certain areas. So, I mean, Pat took what he learned from Jim and the philosophies of the academy, and they're being successful. And so I'm not shocked as much. I just think I didn't see it coming as quick as it did.
Yeah, especially with they have a lot of those players on their team right now that were there last year too, because Chris Albright couldn't get rid of every single contract like maybe he wanted to. So it's you still got to keep some of those players on because you want a team and everything. And you don't want to blow this whole thing up and everything and just start fresh and everything. And maybe he tried to get rid of some of those contracts. Teams want to take them and everything. So he's like, all right, Pat, well, this is the team you have. Let's see what you can do with it. And they sit in 12th in the Supporters Shield standings, like I said. I mean, somebody, I forget, a couple weeks ago on Twitter, somebody was talking about the way Cincinnati was playing or something, or the way that the Union were playing. And Rich Laurie brought up, one key difference for the Union this season is not having Pat Noonan. And like I was talking about last year, we played out of the back with Jacob Glesnes, Jack Elliott. They would start our attacks. Not so much this year. It's like whoever gets the ball, it's a long ball over the top, and we're going to play this just fast transition ball. It's not going to be, all right, we'll build out of the back. It's like as soon as the Union get the ball, long ball over the top or into the channels, and that's how we're going to build our attack. But Pat Noonan's taken his two center backs, Tyler Blackett, Jeff Cameron, and their other center backs, and now these guys are starting the attack for Cincinnati. They're not playing long balls constantly over the back, over the top, and everything like the Union are doing. They're taking the time building out the attack. They found a good number 6 to protect the back line. Everything you need to have a successful team. What did the Union do once they got rid of Harris Union? They went out and signed 2 number 6s, because if you want to be successful, not only in this league but in soccer in general, you want somebody to protect your back line. You want a good number 6. The Union didn't know what they had in Matai Orvats. They thought that Jose Martinez would be the player that would be the project, and it's been the complete opposite. And so the Union went out, signed 2 of these guys, and whoever won the job won it. And we all knew Harris, as good as he is a passer, he sucks defensively. And that as soon as Pat Noonan, Chris Albright got there, what do? They go out and sign a number 6. This guy's been pretty good for them this season. And I think it's why you can see Cincinnati, and yeah, they've conceded 25 goals this season, but, you look at what they've done in years prior and everything. They've conceded a lot more goals this time of the season. To see Cincinnati finally get wins at home, 2 wins. I know it's only 2 wins, but Cincinnati could not win in their own stadium, and their fans have to be loving that. And so to see Pat Noonan come in with the pieces that were there, pieces that they brought in and everything, and make Cincinnati what they are so far, it's been a huge surprise for me. Seeing them at 19 points, they've got wins where, they've looked very, very confident. They've lost some games where, they probably should have got points. But yeah, Cincinnati's having a fantastic season. And, I don't want to turn this into a Cincinnati podcast and everything, but, you do have to pay your dues to Chris Albright, Pat Noonan,
Absolutely.
Ray Gaddish, former Union players. Like you mentioned, we all joked, oh yeah, they're going to become Union too. Well, yeah, they've stopped signing players and stealing people from our front office, and they've adapted the philosophy that Pat Noonan found was successful with Union last season, and now he's made it successful with Cincinnati this season. But what Union player surprised you the most this season?
So when you asked me that, I've been thinking about this since you texted me that. I could go with probably 5 people. Here's my thought. Julian Carranza. Now, hear me out. Carranza, because when we signed him, I think we were looking at comparing him and Casper. I don't know if you remember that. You and I were talking about him and Casper, and we were like, oh, wow, this can be comparable, Ua's going to be good, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't understand how aggressive he is. He's like Brandon Aronson. I mean, he's on that ball. He's aggressive. Yeah, he gets some penalties that you could be like, eh. But that goal against LAFC, the way he finishes, the way, like we talked about in New England, when he's not on the field, the Union miss him so much. So I think he's been the biggest surprise. You could say Harriel, only because of what he did with Bizo. You can even say Ali Bedoya. As much as I was even like, it's time to move on. I mean, he's gotten better with age. I think he's still very serviceable. But yeah, for me, it's Carranza. I didn't think he would be this effective in our system, and he has. And he has been a breath of fresh air, and I think he's going to get even better in it. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how long he's going to be here. I mean, if he keeps playing like this, and we're going to pick up that loan. I mean, I've seen people go, do you think we're going to why haven't we picked up his loan? Guys, we're waiting. I think we're just waiting for the end of the year. We already have a pre-negotiated deal from my understanding. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, he's going to be here. I mean, that'd be probably the biggest blunder ever if we don't pick that option up. But yeah, I mean, I think the questions for me with Carranza is how long is he a Union player? You know, I think he's going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, he could wind up being the best player ever for the Union. And
He
I
could.
think right now, I mean, if you want to say Kai Wagner is the best player the Union have ever had, I'll definitely have that conversation with you because
Absolutely.
I do think that man, it's so hard for me. I'm going to ask you, next, your top 3 Union players of the season. And I'm sure you and I are probably going to say the 3 same players, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to say the same thing. It's just what order you have them in. I mean, that's the hardest part. But if you want to tell me that Kai Wagner is the best Union player this season, okay, yeah, I'm not going to say you're wrong. Kai Wagner has been fantastic this season, and we'll talk about him here in a little bit. But yeah, for me, it's 100% Nate Harriel. I mean, we saw glimpses of him getting starts last year. It was like, is this guy is he ready yet? That's the whole thing it came down to. Is he ready? And we saw him have a fantastic game against New York City in the playoffs. And you're like, okay, well, this guy next season, once he gets a full off season in, he's going to be pushing Bazo for that starting job. And Bazo came out of camp and won the starting job after a blunder against Minnesota. Nate, it's your turn to see if you can cement this place. If not, then Bazo goes back to you. And Nate hasn't looked back on it yet. So I'll always give Matt Ralph credit for this because he's been telling us on Twitter when Nate was with Bethlehem Steel that this is a real player. This is going to be a good player for the Union. And so many people were overlooking that because, you had Mark McKenzie, you had Brendan Aronson. All the talk was about Paxton Aronson down in the academy. So it's like he had players in front of him that were getting more attention. And Nate didn't let any of that get to him and everything. He stuck with what he stuck with. He kept working hard and everything. And when he got his chance, he never looked back on it. And the one thing that's been so surprising for me is, I don't know if you noticed this, but when Nate first got the starting job, like he wouldn't go for it as much. That would be more alley. But now as the season's gone on, they've built a chemistry where Nate's pushing farther up in the attack and everything, getting more comfortable in the attack. And we know how good Nate is defensively. Definitely one of the best defensive players on the Union's team. The best jumper in the air, in my opinion, because we see how good he is on set pieces. We scored a goal against New York City in the playoffs. But now we're seeing Nate get comfortable in the attack. And if he can find the end product, getting an assist, he might not be here much longer. I think, he'll probably be here for a couple more seasons. But, teams love a fullback that can attack because that's what you see in Europe. A lot of fullbacks aren't great at defending. They're good at attacking. But once you get a fullback that can defend, you got the perfect player right there that can, 1, attack, but 2, defend. And so many fullbacks in today's games don't want to defend. And Nate's a defenseman first, and then he goes up into the attack. And now we're seeing him get more confident. If he can build on what he's doing the last couple games in the attack, I don't see why Nate can have 5-6 assists this season because he's looked good with some of his crosses. He's getting by players with his speed. He's doing a good job to track back when, the Union lose the ball. I mean, he's completely outblown any expectations I had for him this season. And, Julian Carranza, I think, is a huge surprise, too, because it's like, what are you getting? 3 goals in 2 years with Inter Miami, and you see 4 goals a season already with Union, and he hasn't even played in every single game because he's been suspended, whether it's been too many yellow cards, whether it's, he got that stupid red card against Montreal in Montreal. So, he's missed some games, but every time that he's played, he looks excellent. And, there has been a lot of players you can say that have been a big surprise. Some people might say Daniel Gazdag. For me, I thought he was going to have the season. I mean, in my season predictions, I said Daniel Gazdag's going to lead this team in goals. He's going to be the MVP of the season. I think he's going to be pushing for MVP in MLS as a whole. And so all he needed was an off season, needed rest and everything, because you saw glimpses of what Daniel Gazdag could do, especially at the end of the last season when he scored, I think, like 5 goals in 8 games, including in the playoffs. So that's not really a surprise for me, but Nate, Julian Carranza, definitely 2 players this season that have been huge surprises for me, for sure. Like I said, your top 3 Union players, I mean, for me, Daniel Gazdag, Julian Carranza, Kai Wagner. You can put that however you want. It's fine. Or even if you want to say, I know some people want to put Andre Blake in there because he's definitely saved us so many points this season. I feel like he saves us at least 8 or 9 points every single year. I mean, we could have lost down in Nashville if it wasn't for Andre Blake coming out big early on in that game. So, who for you are your top 3 players on the season so far?
Well, getting back to Harrow for a second, if you don't mind. I just want to say one thing. The thing I love most, and you hit everything, and we've talked about it, but that I love that Nate does well, is as he's getting more time in MLS and teams are figuring him out at times and he gets beat. The thing I love about him is he's so hungry. He'll get beat on a play, and then the very next time they'll try to do it again, and he won't get beat. Like, he's just so hungry, and that's what I love about him. But so for me, Daniel Gazdag, you can't. I mean, I know at the beginning of the season, you and a couple other people were on, and I was like, well, let's see. And he's come back in better shape. And I mean, his balls, his play, I mean, from the infamous meme at the game I was at in New York City, which is one of the greatest memes ever, to Taddy. I mean, that's still awesome. But I think the way he plays, he fits. I know people are like, is he a true 10? I don't care. He fits what we need at that spot. And for me, with Carranza, and as it gets better, like that little triangle there up front, we talk about the spine and back. That's a nice little piece as they get more linked up in play, I think, for them. But yeah, Daniel definitely. And then Kai, I mean, let's be honest. Kai, we were talking about like, well, his match next year, we should have sold him maybe this winter. He's gotten better. I mean, he's probably playing better than he did all of last year and the year before. I mean, and that's crazy. And I think it was Kevin Kincaid who said in his recent podcast this past week, he's almost too good for the Union at this point. And when I stopped and thought about that, I was like, yeah, he is. I mean, if he gets about a foot high, 6 inches higher, Kai Kamara does not score that goal against us in Montreal. Now, as bad as that goal was, I mean, he gets that foot up, that's 3 points for us. He's made crosses, balls, as you've said. And then number 3 for me, and I mean, I got to go with this just because it's Andre Blake. I mean, from him, the Nashville game, I mean, has he done some things? I mean, he's missed 1 or 2 balls this year where you're like, oh, you should have made that play. But every goalie does that, let's be honest. I think as well, like Kai, he's playing better. He's seeing the ball well. I mean, the 2 penalty kicks he missed, he read them right. I mean, just they were well-struck balls. And I think he's also, I pulled a stat up. He's like second in the MLS in like distance kicked. Like everybody used to make fun, like, he's a decent kicker. He's got a leg on him. Like his distance, his percentages, he's getting better. And it's crazy to think he may never leave the MLS just because of his age and that whole Jamaican thing with the English Premier League. So kind of during the offseason, I remember you had that nice little kind of discussion about Andre Blake. It's true. I think Andre has earned the right to be a Union for as long as he wants to be. And I think fans, even outside MLS need to appreciate, how good he is. He's the best in this region of the world. I think. Is he better than Matt Turner, our goalkeeper at the USMS? Yeah, he is. They're about 1A, 1B, but I'm a Union fan. I give him that. But those are my 3. But I could also say, Jose. I could say Martinez. I mean, Carranza. I mean, heck, even our center backs. I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's almost easier to say who really hasn't stepped up this year than it is I mean, we could name a couple names or who's been a little disappointing.
Yeah.
I think that's more the easier question. But it's just, and I think that's the exciting part is Jim has said it. We have not played our best soccer. Really, Jim? We haven't played our best soccer because you ask some of those Sons of Ben members have been there since 2010. They've been dying for this, you know. You know what I'm saying? Like we're playing pretty good, but yeah, we can play better too. Obviously.
You might have given me a new idea for not to ask the next couple people, whatever the top 3 players that have been the best for the union. Maybe I should ask the top 3 most disappointing players. So I definitely have a list, 3 players that come to my mind like super fast. But yeah, it's so funny too. Like not even to mention our 2 center backs in like top 3 because man, we have so many good players. You're right on this team that are just like I don't know. I feel like we're just taking their performances like it's like we come to expect it. Like that's not a bad thing. Like it's definitely a good thing. It just tells you how well this team is, and we talk about it all the time. Where there's no superstar on this team. The superstar is the team, and you can make an argument for 6, 7, 8, 9 guys who are the best player for the union, and that's what's going to help this team to go far in the season. And you mentioned Kai Wagner. We'll go ahead and talk about potential departures right now, and that is a good point by Kevin Kincaid. Where I think he probably is playing better than MLS. He's playing better than what the union are probably capable of producing. I mean, he needs to be in a top 5 league, and we saw, I think, a couple days ago, he was linked last week with Stuttgart in the Bundesliga, who avoided relegation. Kai's been open about wanting to go back to Germany, wanting to go back and be closer to family. Leeds United have been linked with Kai Wagner. Tom Bogert did a podcast a couple weeks ago where he reported, which I can't believe he never put out a tweet. Like, I feel like this would get you so much traction. Like, why wouldn't you put this tweet out? He said that the union in the wintertime turned down an offer from Brentford and Fulham between $6 to $8 million for Kai Wagner. And when you sent me, like, you heard that someplace, I was like, no, the union would never do that, because if somebody offered them that, they would 100% accept that. But then I heard Tom Bogert say that. I'm like, okay, well, this guy's like, he has ins with every single team. Like, he obviously knows what he's talking about. And so for the union to turn down $6 to $8 million for Kai Wagner, that tells me that Ernst Tenner feels like he can get $10+ million for Kai Wagner. And yeah, I mean, Kai Wagner is a great player. I just, I thought, in my opinion, I thought he was between $6 to $8 million. $10 million. Look, I'm here for it. Ernst Tenner evaluates talent a lot better than me. It's a reason why he gets paid and I don't. And other teams might value Kai at the same, or maybe they don't, and that's why he hasn't been sold yet. But you go ahead and look how much Leeds United just bought Brendan Aronson for, $30 million.
That was amazing.
The link now with Tati Castellanos for New York City FC, who apparently want between $15 to $20 million for Tati. We could potentially see Tati going to Leeds United. And if you're paying $15, $20 million for Tati, then why can't you spend $10 million for Kai Wagner?
Exactly.
You absolutely can. And so I know. I'm going to keep throwing your name out there, Billy. You're in denial that Kai's not going to be gone this summer, but I don't see how Kai isn't gone in this summer. I mean, we were just talking about how Nate Harriel, if he can add the offensive production to his game, how much longer is he going to be here with the union? But Kai Wagner already has the offensive production, 5 assists on the season. He's a good defender. It's like he's everything you want in a fullback. And on top of that, he's a left back. How many good left backs off the top of your head can you name in the world? Not a ton, I bet. That is the hardest position in soccer, in my opinion. I've only played high school soccer. That's the highest I've ever played. But, after I got done playing high school, I played with people in college that played in college just for fun and everything. And they'd always be like, all right, well, we don't want to play left back, Todd. You go ahead and play left back. And that is the hardest position ever, because especially if you're a right-footed player, like, you feel so uncomfortable on the left side of the field where you have to use your left. And you go ahead and look at the professional level, teams struggle to find a good left back. And Kai Wagner is definitely the best left back in MLS. He's way too good for MLS. And so, as much as I'd hate to see Kai go, if you get $10 million, $10 plus million for Kai Wagner, then yeah, it's like, thank you, Kai, for the 4 great years. I remember when it was announced that the Union were signing you, everybody was pissed. Signing a player from the 3rd division in Germany, people were like, what are you doing? This isn't what we need. Like, who is this guy? Like, oh, typical Union being cheap and everything. And it's like, after a couple games, like, you see that this kid has talent. And as the years have went on, he's got more and more confident. And like I said, I mean, if you want to say he's the best Union player this season, the best Union player of all time, I'm here to have that conversation with you.
Right.
I won't say you're wrong or not, because you look at how much Kai does for us offensively. Like I said, 5 assists. He's up there in MLS in key passes. I think I have that someplace in my notes. Someplace I'll go and look for that. But like, this guy is creating so many chances for us. I mean, he should have a lot more assists than just 5. And you know, the connection that he has with Sergio Santos every time he's on the field, or, you know, it doesn't matter who the striker is. I mean, he's always putting in on pinpoint. And, you know, we've been unfortunate not to finish some of those chances, but it's like, what more can Kai do to get the attention from teams in Europe? And I fully expect Kai to be gone in the summertime. It sucks because, like I said, I mean, he's our best player, but it's like, this guy's not been shy about saying, yeah, I want to go to Europe. Jim Curtin's not been shy about saying, you know, I only want players on this team that want to play at the highest level. He's fine with players wanting to go to Europe, because you know what that means? That means that those players are going to give 110%. They're going to try even harder to get noticed by teams in Europe so they can go and get back to Europe to get another chance, or do you go and experience Europe for the first time? And so, you know, if Kai's here past the summertime, great. But if he's not, you know, I think that's a huge hole that the Union are going to have to try to fill. And we'll talk about, you know, areas that the Union need to strengthen here, but just your thoughts on Kai Wagner potentially being gone.
I'm sorry, Billy, but I agree with Todd. And, you know, I love you, Billy, but yeah, he's getting sold. I mean, it's simple business sense. I mean, what, Todd, do you remember what we bought him for? It was like,
yeah, 300,000.
Oh, I thought it was like 500,000. Okay, so it was less. Okay, so we bought him for 300,000, and we could potentially make $10 million. I mean, I hate to sound like, you know, but it's business. It's soccer business. Like, you can't turn that down. And if he gets if Ernst gets an offer, he can't refuse. I mean, what's the ideal situation? $9 million, and they'll let him do what Matt Turner did, play to the end of the season. That's great. But I hate to tell you this, no team in the Premier League or the top 5 leagues is going to say, oh, yeah, you can keep him to the end of the year. No one's going to do that. Or if they do, it's going to be less. And that's just not good business. I mean, you got to give Kai the opportunity. He's earned it. He's earned it. We as a team, we as fans, we need to let Kai go. I mean, and I hate to say that to sound like, do I want him to go? Absolutely not. Is he going to be very missed? Yes. Do I think if he goes, it's going to be gloom and doom? No, I think somebody like Real, somebody like, didn't even somebody say Leon Flock could play that position? Like, yeah. You could piecemeal something to where we're still going to be where we are. And who knows, maybe I was thinking about this the other day. Maybe that's why Ernst is waiting. Maybe he's got something up his sleeve that he sells Kai and here comes somebody else. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. But you never know. I mean, we didn't see what we did this summer coming with either of our strikers. So who knows? I trust our front office, and I think we will get the job done. But I've just been enjoying why he's been here, because it's not going to be many more games, unfortunately. So I think at the end of the day, do you want to have that conversation that he's the best Union player ever? Yeah, we can have that, because he's done so much for his team. He's been part of so many of these great teams. So at the same time, I think the thing that we're going to miss is the corners. We're going to miss the long balls to the strikers, like you said, with the connection, the link up with Sergio. But at the end of the day, I will be excited, like Ren, to see him play in a top 5 league, and I will cheer him on.
June 26th against New York City. That could be the last game that we see Kai Wagner
could
at
be.
home. Because the the summer transfer window opens July 7th for Europe. So, you know what? It might not be much longer, like you said, that Kai's in a Union shirt. So it's like, last year I went into thinking, okay, well, this is probably the last time I ever see Kai in the playoffs. And I was like, okay, well, we won a playoff game. Then this is going to be the next one. Then nobody expected the whole Curvis situation to happen. And so I was like, wow, like I thought I was going to see Kai for at least one more game. But then in the offseason, I went into thinking, okay, well, I'm never going to see Kai ever again in person. Like that was it. And I mean, you've got to feel that it's close. And for the Union to turn down $6 to $8 million, that just tells you how much value Ernst Tanner sees in this guy. And look, some fans might think I'm crazy, but I really do think if Kai Wagner gets a move to a top 5 league, I think there's a real high chance that he gets a chance with the German national team and potentially wins that spot. I mean, Germany sucks at producing left backs. They don't even have a left back. They're playing a left midfielder as a left back. So it's like, you bring in a natural right back, that would be so crazy to think that, wow, the Philadelphia Union had a player on their team that is now playing for the German national team. I mean, that would be unbelievable to think that, wow, that the Union produced a player. Like, I don't think, there's any shame in saying the Union produced Kai Wagner, because if Kai Wagner wouldn't have came to MLS, his career probably would have stayed in the second and third divisions in Germany. And that's why he came over to MLS to get a chance later on in Europe to, further his career, to, refine some production that he was lacking in the third division. And I mean, just what a player he has been. And it kind of feels like right now we're saying goodbye to Kai Wagner right now. But I mean, I really do think it's close. And hopefully fans can start to come to realize that it probably is close. But Jose Martinez is the other player that I had on there that's a potential departure, but I don't know. Tom Burgert says that nothing was ever serious. Yeah, there's been clubs linked with him, but he said no teams ever offered anything serious. He'll be 28 in August. And you look at Char with Portland, probably the best defensive midfielder this league's ever seen, and he never went to Europe and he stayed with Portland all those years. You look at his countryman Caceres with New York Red Bulls, who I think is good enough to play in Europe. He still hasn't left MLS. And I remember when I had my friend Jordan Floyd on the podcast and we were talking about Jose Viasco, and South Americans get a little bit upset that they're selling South Americans to MLS, and MLS is in, producing these players, helping them progress and selling them to Europe like the South Americans want. But at the same time too, like I don't feel like yes, you want to do that with some of the players, but if some players stay in MLS for the rest of their careers, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, like I said, Char has been a fantastic defensive midfielder for Portland Timbers, and if Jose Martinez stays here for the rest of his career, I'm not going to complain. If you got to give him a DP contract or give him a lot more money than what he's earning to keep him happy here, which I think he is happy. I'm not saying he's not happy, but to reward him for staying in Philadelphia, then do it. Like 100% do it. For sure, one of our best players. But yeah, I don't see Jose Martinez leaving this summer. Maybe something in the winter time, but Kai Wagner is for sure the only player I'm really confident is going to be gone in the summertime. We have two players gone because Jack DeVries got sold.
Yep.
Which nobody's really talking about that, or there were some people talking about it on Twitter, but people were like, oh, why? Like, why are we selling him when he wasn't even given a chance? But it's like, I wasn't even planning on having this discussion, but let's go ahead and have this discussion. The same thing with Quinn Sullivan. Why did the Union give him a contract? It's because the kid was way too talented to let walk for free. Yeah, I mean, he's a winger, just like Jack was, and the Union don't play with wingers. But because you have a player with that much talent, you got to give them a first-team contract. And the Union did right by Jack and loaned him off to Europe. He impressed in Europe enough where they want to buy him permanently, and the Union accepted it, and now he's off to Europe permanently. And yeah, it sucks that we didn't get to see Jack play too much with the Union, but Yeah, I have no problems with the union giving players like Jack Quinn Sullivan a contract. We know they're talented enough, and it sucks that you're not going to get the best out of them with the union because they don't play in positions where the union don't play that formation. But to see the union do right by them and give them a first team contract to get their professional career started early, to give Jack a chance to go experience Europe, and then come to an agreement with Venetia. That's the club, right? Venetia.
Venetia, yeah,
Yeah.
they got relegated, but they got relegated. They were like finished last in Serie A this year. But yeah, they, from my understanding, they went a knocking, and Ernst decided to do some business. So yeah, I mean, that's good for them. I mean, I know Venetia has a lot of teams. A lot of Americans on that team. I think they have like three now, including Jack. Is that correct? I'm trying to think here. Yeah, I know
I
that.
think it's 3 or 4.
Yeah. So I mean, good for him. I mean, that is a league. I think he's going to be able to grow, and who knows? I mean, there's a possibility. They go back up next year. He has a good season, and maybe he moves on to another league, or stays in Serie A. So I'll be interested, and I'll be excited to follow his career because, he's definitely did good stuff here in the academy growing through, and so we'll see what happens.
One of the best players in the academy. It just sucks that the union weren't able to utilize his talents on the first team just because the union don't play with wingers, like I said, and it sucks. But the union did right and gave him a contract. And I'm looking at it, and it is four players that they have that are. It is Patrick Leal, Busio, Tesserman, and Jack. So yeah, they've got four. So yeah, just adding another American to the mix permanently with Jack DeVries, and hopefully they can get promoted back up to Serie A next season. But yeah, to see Jack given an opportunity to Europe, and hopefully he does well. And just the more and more players the union sell to Europe is only good for this team. Players are going to look, hey, I want to go to that academy, or maybe I'm a player struggling in Europe. I want to go to the union and have them help fix my career so I can go back to Europe. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if that's the way that the union want to continue to do things, yeah, I'm 100% happy with it. But like I said, Kyle and I love stats, and so there's a ton of stats that we could definitely go over. And so I saw Joe Tanzi, it was like last week or 2 weeks ago, type out some of the union stats on Football Reference. And so let's go ahead and look at the offensive numbers so far. So, this might be the point of the podcast where people skip like 15, 20 minutes ahead and like, all right, well, I'll come back once you guys are done talking about stats. So I'll try not to talk
Fast forward.
about stats
I
too
got
long. But yeah, so for offensive stats, the Union are third in shots on target with 36.8%, fifth in shots from free kicks, 10. Seventh in XG, 21.8 goals they're projected to have. Seventh in non-penalty XG, 20.3. Eighth in shots on target, 60th. And 13th in goals, 19. Now, the one thing I will say about Football Reference is so they have the Union listed as 18 goals on there, but everywhere else has them listed as 19. So I guess they're
Right.
not including own goals or something. I think you and I had that conversation. I know MLS's website has shots on target a little bit different. I think they say that the Union have 64, but we're just going off of stats off of Football Reference. They have a ton of stats on there, and I know you and I both love using that website. But yeah, to see the Union in the top 10 and a lot of these stats, just what are your thoughts on just how the Union are playing offensively? And look, let's keep in mind that Mikel Ua hasn't even been here for a majority of the season, and the Union are in the top 10 in a lot of those stats.
So, okay, so here's my thing. So Joe Tanzi in that tweet brought up about Mikel Ua, what was it, 2.19? His shots per target's 9 for 12 shots on target, which is insane. So I went back and looked at that tweet, and I found it, and then I went on there and I looked on Football Reference. There's only one player that is having a phenomenal year that is ahead of him. Most of those players that are non-qualifiers, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Todd, the non-qualifiers.
Maybe.
Yeah, okay, so you got to click on non-qualifiers because UWA doesn't come up on that unless you go real down.
Oh,
So
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah. You have to play enough games to quit. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a non-qualifier, okay? Only one of the qualifiers has him, and that's Taxi down at DC. All right, and he's having a phenomenal year. 2 spots below, Hani Mutar. And then you go back and look at some other things. So that is what is interesting because when you then kind of go and put his minutes together, you know that he's compatible with both of them. Now, time will tell if that's actually the case, and we don't know. I mean, it's a fun little stat. I am so shocked when I went back through that because we've heard, I would love to see. I saw a tweet the other week. I'd love to see. I think it was, who was it? Was it Dallas or Austin scored 4 goals and somebody tweeted, I wish our team would score 4 goals and have an attack. And then you go and look at these stats and it's like, we're not that bad. The problem is we're not linking up yet. We don't have enough consistency up top. But does that shock me, those stats? Yeah, a little bit. At the same time, I think when you look at how this team plays and where we're at, it's not shocking, especially shots on target. The thing that surprised me when you look at some of those stats, I mean, who is at top? LAFC, NYCFC, Red Bulls, Austin, teams that are putting the ball in the net. So it's just going to become a matter of time. If we can actually start getting the ball in the net, linking up with Gajda, Kranz, and Uwa, the goals are going to come. But Jim said best, we're not going to be a team that's going to put 4 or 5 goals up every game. And that's why I always say, you put 2 goals up on this team. If this team can get 2 goals up, that's a win. That's 3 points 9 times out of 10. So, no, nothing really crazy other than that stat. And then, I think the biggest thing for me is, where do we score our goals? I mean, we're like, if you look at like distance per goal, we're like basically banging them in at the penalty box. We're one of those teams that are getting them in there, tight corners off set pieces, banging them in. We're not hitting bangers outside Glesnes. We're not hitting anything outside the box. And then we've been bottom of the league there. The other thing that was very interesting, I mean, I think the only concerning thing was what was it? For the amount of shots was our goal percentage. We're towards the bottom. But again, I take that to linking up playing, and I think that's going to come. I mean, what are your thoughts? Any crazy stats that we've been sharing back and forth that have really stuck out to you?
Probably the most shocking stat is just the Union, just the amount of goals that they've let in for the equalizer. I think, that's the biggest disappointment of the season for me, is to see that, they've blown the lead 6 times, which is either second or third most in MLS. I believe second most, tied for second in MLS. And just way too many goals that they've conceded. And it's like, man, I hate talking about the past because, whatever's happened in the past happened in the past. But it's like that LAFC, if that Nashville game, if they could have got wins in them, then that's when you start talking about separation. Like New York City, yeah, they're a game in hand. Like they wouldn't be in first place. Like we would start building on these leads, like even more. People complain about, I want the Union to score 3-4 goals a game. You know how the Union score 3-4 goals a game? They have to score first, which they're doing, and then they have to get that second goal without conceding. Because once they get that second goal, then teams are going to start coming at the Union even more. Now the Union can hit you on the counterattack where, they play those risky transition balls where, sometimes they come off, sometimes they don't. They're going to start coming out a lot more because the opposition are pushing more men forward. And so you get up by 2 goals, then you're going to go up by 3-4 goals because you're going to beat teams on the counterattack. And the crazy thing is, too, right, you see so many fans give Sergio Santos crap about, he's not a good player. And, yeah, maybe he's not an MLS starter, but he's definitely an MLS quality player to have on your team. Baseball, we both like baseball, right? It's good to have a spot starter, right? Because it's not realistic to think all 5 of your starting pitchers are going to be healthy for the whole season. So you want to feel confident that you have a spot starter in that team. And Sergio Santos, I feel like, is the Union spot starter. It's like, okay, he probably can't start every single game because of his health, but start here and then. I'm fine with, and Sergio Santos is more than capable of doing that. I mean, Joe Tanzi brought up a stat too that said that Kai Wagner and Sergio Santos were both in, I believe it was, I've lost it, here it is, both in the top 5 in expected assists. Sergio Santos is playing a lot of great balls. We're just not finishing. And once Mikel Ua gets healthy, hopefully once we have Cincinnati in 2 weeks, something like that, hopefully, he'll be healthy enough to start. And if Sergio comes off the bench, if he starts, Mikel's going to finish a lot of those chances that Sergio Santos sets up. And so that's been the biggest concern is, not building one of the leads, blowing leads. If the Union could correct that, I think, this team is going to do a lot of damage this season. I know, things are going to look different if Kai Wagner's gone because you're not going to get the attack you're getting on the left side of the field like you get with him. And so because of that, do you go out and get maybe a left-sided midfielder who's more attacking than Liam Flock? If you want to drop Liam Flock into left back role, Matt Real, I think can do a job. He's definitely not as good offensively as Kai Wagner, but I don't know.
No.
Who's to say that he doesn't become Nate Harriel with the more games that he plays, the more confident he becomes in the attack. And, he's definitely not going to get anywhere close to Kai's level. But
No, he's not.
If he can get close enough to it, then I think we'd be fine. And so I think the international break came at such a perfect time for the Union where, Jim Curtin knows because he's been asked about it multiple times in press conferences about blowing leads. That's one thing that him and his staff are finally going to be able to sit down and figure out how do we not blow leads. So looking at all this tape and everything, I guarantee you, figuring out, okay, well, how can we position ourselves a little bit on the field where we're getting attacked, leaking up the goals to give up the equalizer. And I'm sure we're going to see the Union come out in the second half and look completely different than they did in the first half in terms of giving up the equalizing goal. So that's the only thing that's really concerning to me is seeing them give up the lead. A couple of the stats I want to bring up real quick. Like I said, I know a lot of fans aren't huge about stats, but the Union have 5 players in the top 20 in blocks. Kai Wagner is number 1, Nate Harriel 11, Martinez 12, Bedoya 14, Elliott 20. We talked about it earlier in the podcast. This team is built defense first and then offense second. This team always puts the body on the line, and nothing says you're putting your body on the line than blocking a shot, because who wants to get in front of a shot and say, I don't know where the shot's going to go, but I'm confident that, I'm going to be able to get a foot on the ball, a head to the ball, a chest on the ball, whatever. I want to help this team win. I don't want a goal to be conceded, so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to throw my body to block the ball. And you have 5 players in the top 20 that are doing exactly that. Kai Wagner leads the league with 41 blocks, and the second highest total is 34. So Kai Wagner has distanced himself from first to second. When you look possession, the Union are second with 2,571 pressures. The Union are second in terms of blocks behind Cincinnati. We talked about, they look so similar to how the Union play. 253 blocks for Cincinnati, 252 for the Union. This is going to be a great game in a couple weeks against Cincinnati where it's not going to be a cakewalk and easy 3 points for the Union. And I think Jim Curtin and his staff are going to be drilling that into the players like, hey, look, we had Pat, what Pat's about, and he's going to have Cincinnati coming here with that same mentality that he had us playing with in that last season. And so I think we're going to get a great game for Cincinnati, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself talking about Cincinnati, but I can't wait for that game. You go ahead, look, they're tied for third in successful pressures. So, yeah, it's important that the Union are pressuring the ball, but it doesn't matter if you're pressuring the ball. It's, okay, are these pressures leading to a turnover? And the Union are third in that category. 4th in tackles 1, and 11th in interceptions. And so, the Union are just dominating defensively like we always know that they're going to do.
And I love you for that because honestly, there's all those numbers I had pulled up before when I was told you those are the stats I had. Yep, you just pulled them up. So it's going to be true. I'm so excited for this game with Cincinnati and the following week against NYCFC because here are 2 great games. We're going to find out with the Union coming up. And again, not to get ahead of ourselves, but yeah, I think these are going to be exciting games. And then also it goes back to what we are. Defense wins championships. So none of these stats are surprising when you look at them. We've seen them all year. The one stat, and we talk about goals. Union are first in the MLS in non-penalty expected goals per shot. So that tells me we're getting the balls in there to create the opportunities. Ua, Carranza, Gazdag, they start linking up. People want to see goals. Here they are. So I think it's just going to be a matter of time. Again, it may never happen, it might happen, but the opportunities are there up top. But yes, the defense will carry the day at the end of the day. Us getting to the MLS Cup is going to be predicated on the defense, on the pressures, on the goalkeeper. So, I mean, yeah, none of those stats that we just read out are like, oh my gosh, shocking. When I saw this, when Joe sent that out and then you shared, I'm like, yeah, that's about right.
So, I mean, you asked me, stats wise, what's the biggest surprise for me? And I'll go ahead and send that back to you. What's been the biggest surprise for you? And it doesn't have to be stats. It can be, player. I know we talked about players. It can be a game. I mean, it can be whatever you want. Just what's been the biggest surprise for you 14 games in for the Union?
So here's why our road record. So I went back and I was pulling some of our road stats. So we're only behind Red Bulls for goal differential. I mean, goals scored on the road. We're at +4. They're, I think, at +8 goals on the road. And then we are only lost in Toronto. We're third of goals scored on the road. Cincinnati is ahead of us, yes. Cincinnati is a road warrior. They're probably outside of the Red Bulls. They're probably the other best road warrior team in the MLS. So another plug in that game. And then we actually scored more goals on the road than we have at home this year. How crazy is that? As good as we are on the team road, we've only scored 8 goals. We've scored 11 on the road, and we've both played 7 goals. That's a crazy stat. That's probably the most crazy stat there. We have 8 home goals, 11 road goals.
Man, there's 8 goals. One of them was an own goal at home too, thanks to Eloy Room. So, man, I didn't even realize that the Union have only scored 8 goals at home. So
that's crazy.
You throw in Mikhail Uwa, who's a proven goal scorer.
Yes,
and he's going to make a difference for the Union, and it's just about getting him healthy and looking at it. Wow, 4 wins on the road for Cincinnati. I mean, that's unbelievable that they have 4 wins. I mean, great on them, but I didn't realize that either until you said that. For me, we talked about it a little bit for stats. If I'm not going to say, blowing the lead, then this is another stat that I found because we love stats. They've lost the 3rd most points after the 75th minute. They've lost 4 points after the 75th minute on the season. And so if the Union, they're doing a good job, don't get me wrong, closing out games. It's just the game against LAFC, the game against Nashville, they dropped points in that game. And especially, I believe both of those goals were scored after the, 82nd minute or something like that. They gave up late goals. The Union did the job for 95% of that game. And then at the last second, gave up goals. And again, I don't want to talk about living in the past because what good does it do? But it does eat you up a little bit. The Union were so close in both of those games, getting 6 points. They played terrible against Montreal at home. Jim Curtin keeps talking about that's the worst game we played so far this season. At home, we just look completely flat. But if the Union can just find ways in the second half of the season to build on the lead, to not blow leads, yeah, this team's going to be so dangerous. And I think, you get Mikhail healthy, you continue to create the chances that they're creating with the players they have, this team's going to be okay. But what are your expectations for the rest of the season? Because I told you before we recorded, I went back and looked at my season predictions for the first 14 games. I thought the Union would have 21 points. They have 25 points currently. I expected losses at Montreal, New York City, and Nashville and LA. They got wins in New York City. They got a win in Montreal. They got draws in Nashville and LA. So those 2 games completely surprised me. And I said the Union would be 6 wins, 5 losses, 3 draws on the season. They have 6 wins, 1 loss, 7 draws. A lot more draws than I expected. But yeah, I mean, this team, if you're saying the Union are playing better than you expected or they're playing as good as you expected, I think you're a liar.
They're definitely playing better than I expected. I know you and I talked before we recorded that, Yeah, we are 1 point ahead. But then when I kind of pulled up, I was looking at my phone. When I'm pulling it up, I obviously am taking this on a month-to-month basis because the only thing is I kind of have him at like 20 points right now, kind of similar to you. Like, we're playing better. So it's crazy. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, yes. You can't live in the past. You got to live in the moment because, we could have had probably, I mean, let's be honest, we probably could have had 10 points this month or more. And it's crazy. You could say, we could be 6 points up on the support shield. That's cool. But that's not where we're at, but we're there. We're there. And so my expectations are this, I say we stay top 3 in the league at the end of the year. That's, I think, is very doable. When you think about that, are we going to be the top 3 in the league at the end of the year in terms of points? Absolutely. Does that mean we win the West? Do we win the Shield? I don't know. You can't predict things like that. I want to see us get better offensively, get that link up with Kranza, Gazjag, and Ua. I want to see our defense maintain its excellence, even when we lose Kai. I think that's very doable. You brought up about Matt Real. Who says he doesn't get better offensively? I think, and Jim sounds like he has. I mean, you guys have grilled him on those pressers about that, and he has come back in your face. Who was that? Was that Matt George? Like, was grilling him, and Matt's like, and Jim's like, yeah, I have nothing but confidence in Matt Real. And here's another thing with that. Matt wants to go somewhere in the MLS to prove himself because he's tired. He was tired last year. We knew that he kind of wanted to move on and get an opportunity. Well, Matt, here's your opportunity. So show us that you're that team, that player. So there's that. And then, yes, deep run. Let's make a run at the cup. I think those are my expectations, but beyond that, my expectations as a fan base is let's enjoy this. Please, can we enjoy this moment? Because I know there was a meme a couple years ago. I think it was during a royal wedding or something in England where all these people had their phones up and there's this old lady just standing there looking like, just watching. And that's how I've been. I've just been standing there, just enjoying this moment because even when we were at PJ Wellahan's, it was my wife and my buddy and I, we were there and we're watching the Union game. And of course, Elsinho and Sebastian the two were like walking around. It was just amazing how many Union fans showed up for that game. Even the lady out front was like, yeah, we didn't expect this many Union fans to show up. And that was awesome to hear. And then to see the ladies in front of us, like eating, and they were out there having a girls' night. And when Mikel hit that equalizer, just the whole place just started going, ooh, Mikel, doing his little chant from Brøndby. And people were like, what is going on here? Like the look on their face. I mean, let's just have fun with this. I mean, let's enjoy the moment. Let's cherish what we have here because I think it's going to get better. I think we're going to continue to build from the academy. I think Jim, I still think we're going to keep building. We thought 2020 was the high mark, and then we made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's keep enjoying the ride. Like I said in April after the New York City game on Twitter, buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. Let's buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride, please, because those are my expectations. And let the chips fall where they may at the end of the year. But I also just want to thank everybody that comes to the games because I've met so many awesome people at the tailgates. Both my wife and I have made so many cool connections. I mean, Todd, obviously you and I talk, it's just been awesome to see. It really is a family. Like I wasn't at the Miami game. And one of my good friends took his son who's a soccer player, got an opportunity to go take my tickets and they're going to go back. Let's continue to bring people to the games. Let's build generations of fans. Let's have fun. Let's show what Philadelphia soccer is what about. And when WIP keeps saying and doesn't include us in their comments, let's keep being in the comments, being like, hey, what about the union? Don't forget about us. I mean, let's have fun.
Yeah, I think I'm right with you. I think the Union are going to be up there, definitely fighting in the top 3 spot in the Eastern Conference for the playoffs. I guess my only concern is, just what this team is going to look like without Kai Wagner. If he doesn't leave, then I have full confidence that the Union are either going to be first or second in the Eastern Conference. If Kai's not here, then I'd say top 3. But, regardless, I think, you can't predict the future, hope everybody stays healthy and everything, because if they do, then this team is still going to be up there. If Kai leaves, this team's still going to be defensively sound. You still have your front 3 with Ua, Carranza, and Gazdag, and once they start clicking, like you mentioned, the goals are going to start raining in for this team. I have full confidence in that. But yeah, I think, I talk to my sister like every single game. I'm like, man, I should have went in the press box for this game, and I'm like, yeah, I should go in the press box for the Cincinnati game. But it's like, once his goals go in and everything, the enjoyment from the Sons of Ben, the enjoyment from the stadium, like that's what I love in the stands, is just like going nuts, and celebrating the highs of this team. And you got to be professional in the press box. And I'm like, man, I want to do that too, because like I want to see the game, from a different vantage point. And I'm like, man, I really want to do this, but it's like, man, I love being a fan. I love sitting in the river and celebrating with, your brothers and your sisters, and just watching the joy on people's faces that this team brings. And yeah, hopefully new fans keep coming out throughout the summertime. Hopefully, the Union continue to make us proud. I know they will. And just hopefully, regardless of what happens with players going and coming, this fan base stays confident. Hopefully people can accept that the way that the Union are going to play fast transition balls. And, I'm sure we're continuing to get people complaining about this, but, the Union are doing much better than any of us could have projected them to do at the beginning of the season. And, I'm here for it. And,
me too.
Thank you, Kyle, for coming onto the podcast. And like I said,
thanks for having me.
We could have talked about a lot. There were a couple of different topics that I skipped, because I feel like an hour 15 minutes is a pretty long podcast episode. But like I said at the beginning, I haven't given you guys a podcast in like almost 2 weeks, so you guys were due for a long episode. And if you guys enjoy this episode with Kyle and I'm thinking about doing a Twitter Spaces sometime during the week. Get multiple Union fans on the podcast, talk about these same exact topics. Maybe I'll do a little less talking since I gave my thoughts with Kyle, and hear from you guys. So if you guys want to participate in a Twitter Spaces, I'll try to do something like that. I think I did one at like 8 o'clock and 7 o'clock at night. That didn't really work out. I feel like that's when people are having dinner and everything, or you have kids and everything. You're not putting your kids to bed yet. So I don't know, maybe like around 8 o'clock or something, 8:30, maybe we'll try to do a Twitter Spaces again. And yeah, I would love to hear from a ton of Union fans, just to hear your thoughts on the season, about the topics Kyle and I talked about. And I don't know, maybe Kyle and I brought up something that you guys hadn't thought about this season so far, and maybe it's given you a new discussion point to talk about on Twitter. But speaking of Twitter, Kyle, where can people follow you on Twitter?
Well, you can follow me at Coach Almoney. That's my personal account. And then you can also find me at my podcast, Talking Vegas All Day with KA. By the way, I just dropped a USL when Jillian and I were out for our Easter trip. We went and saw the Las Vegas Lights USL team play the Riverhounds, and talked about that, and talked about possible MLS team. And Todd, I thank you for the retweet on that. So, but yeah, you can follow me at Vegas_KA. So that's where you can find me.
For sure. And that's a great episode. The one thing with Kyle, I'll give you credit, is I feel like there's sometimes on this podcast, I ramble, but your episodes are like straight to the point. You give good information. You obviously do your research. And I only have one question for you. And then you came back and like, all right, I'll answer that question for you during that episode. So it's like, you do a really good job with this podcast. That. And
That's not bad for somebody that has ADHD because, like I said, I can ramble on forever. Like my athletes used to tell me all the time, Coach, get to the point. And even my wife would be like, so what's the point, Kyle? And I'll just go on this like 5-minute diatribe. What's the point? Oh, I'm sorry.
Too long.
So yeah, I kind of also like that too. So yeah, I get it.
If you guys aren't following the podcast on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. And I got to get on top of building this website. I was expecting to build this website during the international break because it's going to come to an end very, very fast. So I got to get on top of that and get a new website built. But speaking of Twitter, thank you to, I think I have 1,002 followers now on there. So
congratulations,
for all you guys that,
man.
Follow the pod, and thank you guys for that. And it's even more special if you're not only a follower but you listen to the podcast. I thank you tenfold for that. And hopefully you guys enjoy your week. Like I said, if you guys enjoy this conversation with Kyle and I plan on doing a Twitter Spaces. And Kyle, if you want to come on for that and give more thoughts that we didn't get to, more than welcome to come back on. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.